Super. Oh, it's been really exciting to listen to Deborah's and Julian's presentations and their rigorous methodologies used here. This my presentation will be more conceptual and general. It will be based on my book, Knowledge Resistance, How We Avoid Insights from Others. And there I use the social, economic, and evolutionary sciences to go try to dig deeply into what makes us all, because it's not only the outgroups, it's ourselves who are sometimes resisting some knowledge, sometimes in key areas, such as, of course, the obvious ones, climate change and vaccination, the harms and goods of vaccination, but also about evolution through natural selection and child rearing and many other cases that I bring in here. So let me, I'm going to start now with the title. It's Apollonian and Dionysian Strategies for Dealing with Knowledge Resistance About Society's Problems. And let's see, first of all, what is knowledge resistance? I'm going to use a brief, simple definition here for the sake of time. So knowledge resistance is to avoid or be more or less immune to evidence or arguments associated with a certain knowledge claim. Such as when it doesn't matter how much evidence you would get that climate change is taking place, that won't change your mind on that matter. And this is, you know, we sometimes call it being skeptical, but I argue that knowledge resistance is actually the opposite of skepticism, the way we use it in daily terms. Because when you're skeptical, you wait for, you may gradually allow yourself to be convinced that the counter arguments against your views are correct, and the counter evidence becomes slowly sufficient, and then after a while you say, okay, you got me, you were right, or you seem to be, your knowledge claim seems to be more reasonable than the one I had. Whereas in knowledge resistance, there have actually been studies of how people, both when it comes to whether vaccination causes autism or not, those who believe that very strongly from the beginning, when they get more and more counter evidence, they become more and more certain that vaccination is harmful and causes autism. And those who from the beginning were believing that no, it doesn't cause autism, they become more and more certain that it doesn't cause autism. And these are, as I will argue, very deeply social mechanism that drives knowledge resistance in wicked issues where there is ideology and identity and reality claims are mixed, so to speak, such as many problems we're facing today. So but I'm going to go right into what can we do about harmful knowledge resistance, and then if we have time, I'll go back to the theoretical and scientific basis for what I say. So Apollonian and Dionysian strategies, what are these? Well, as you all know, it's an ancient distinction between the half-siblings Apollon and Dionysius in Greek mythology. And you may also, as many of your psychologists and behavioral psychologists, what comes to mind is perhaps Daniel Kahneman's thinking slow, which would be the Apollonian, and thinking fast, which is the Dionysian. And of course, there is a lot of overlaps here, but there are a couple of things that I think Kahneman doesn't stress, and Nietzsche, who wrote about this Apollon and Dionysius, missed as well. and it's not about reason versus emotion or rationality versus irrationality. So these two, Apollon and Dionysius, actually represent two types of rationality, where Dionysius is the more rationality of prioritizing the group bonding of your community, and whereas Apollon may be more geared towards solving issues, whether health-related, environmental, making more money, or what have you. It could be altruistic or egotistical, and what have you. If we take Dionysus here, he stands for group bonding. You know, they had their all rituals and orgies, and it's not what you orgies is not what you think about in your perhaps filthy minds, but it's about more of spiritual group bonding, where you become one, so to speak. You get out of the individual. You sacrifice your individual integrity and integrity thinking and care most about the group. So group loyalty, and loyalty, that's per definition to favor something or prioritize something or someone despite their flaws. So even if a knowledge claim is wrong, you may stick to it out of loyalty with your group. A lot of us and them, impulsivity, and you learn through anecdotes in your group, gossip, and so on. And that's the Dionysian way mode here. Whereas Apollon is, of course, the god of sun, and the word enlightenment might say it all. It has to do with balance, self-restraint, form, and the Apollonian thinking and moralizing is either geared towards individual integrity, but it's also universal. So I know you, Julian, mentioned the expanding circle. That idea is very Apollonian, to go beyond the what we have, the impulsive or the very natural empathy we have within our own group, and to reason our way towards utilitarianism or what we have. So it's health, moderation, thinking long term, if you should think about those things, and not not favoring our in-group so much, if we should talk in Deborah's terms. So what would be the Apollonian strategies? Well, I argue that we in society are mainly using Apollonian strategies to reduce knowledge resistance in urgent issues of health or environment or what have you. And it's the most obvious one, perhaps, is the notion of we should give people more and better facts. Facts speak for themselves. They should be clearer facts about what's going on, I mean, in epistemic terms. And the idea is that showing, for instance, extreme disproportions between, I'm from Sweden, if you look at Swedish CO2 footprints, they're giant, whereas if you go to Bangladesh, they're tiny. This should make us, the notion with Apollonian here is, just recognizing this disproportion, this perversion, perverse difference, should make us in Sweden reduce the climate harm we cause, so to speak. But as we know, we understand it and we talk about that it's awful and so on, but it rarely leads to any changes in habits, just getting that knowledge, for instance. And we also hear a lot, and I preach it at the university, and I hope they preach it at my kids' schools as well, that you should use triangulation and other types of source criticism, use various sources in order to try to find out what are really the cases in contested issues such as concerning health or environment. And that works fine when in tame issues that don't involve our identity to that deep respect. So if you need to repair your car or something, you probably check various sources on the internet and find a solution. But with the wicked, more intractable, as Deborah calls it, conflicts and issues. This is not really how things work. And we should mix groups for the reason of accumulating knowledge and competences. So each person with her or his integrity, individual integrity, should be combined with the others, and that will add up to the best knowledge. And we should also teach people to avoid the naturalistic fallacy, the view that we should be careful with what we find out about the world. For instance, that if we see that male aggression is substantially higher than female aggression, and that might have some genetic basis as well, we shouldn't be worried about that knowledge just because we're worried that it might legitimize men's violence or increase what would you call it, inequality or something. Science should produce all the knowledge, and then politics and social lives and norms should make sure that we make the best of the knowledge. And we should teach people that science is an imperfect, self-correcting process, the best thing we have. So it's not, we shouldn't try to portray science about ill-doing and well-doing as something, some absolute science or so, but it's the best process, since it has to do with falsifying itself continuously and is therefore superior to, for instance, other types of activism or what have you. And this is just the Harvard seal, where it's nowadays it's the right way with the 3 books. You see, all 3 books are open, but that's fairly new. I think it used to be this, the left side here, where the 3rd book is turned upside down, because there is always some uncertainty about knowledge. We know about DDT and many other things that science has to be constantly revised. But then some parents of Harvard students thought that we pay so much money, so we want the entire truth. So please turn around the 3rd book. But there is one school that still has this book upside down, the 3rd. And I took this picture myself on the house, and it's, maybe you guessed it, but it's intriguing. It's Divinity School that has it still, the good old, more humble version. Dionysian strategies, what would they be? Well, I argue that these are often overlooked, and they should be used more in combination with the Apollonian ones. It also says that you should mix groups of problem solvers to avoid confirmation, but that's to avoid confirmation bias, because we have that from evolution, a tendency to confirm our beliefs, both as individuals and as groups, and therefore we need to mix groups in order to get a better view. Well, I took this picture just because it was beautiful. And instead of having experts, this best and smartest people present data about what should be done to reduce ill-doing, it's much better to use converted role models with whom members of the knowledge resistance group identify and admire. So here is, you had, what was it? Satan, don't mess with our future. I'll come back to that, but this is Don't Mess with Texas, where they used rock stars and what are they? Dallas Cowboys who walked to deal with littering along the highways, because they prejudice is often very useful, and they policymakers were thinking, well, what cohorts, what demographic categories do all this littering? Is it elderly ladies? No, it's not, probably not. Is it men between 17 and 23? Yes, probably. And they took their heroes, Dallas Cowboys and Rockstars, to on various film clips walk along the highway and say, don't mess with Texas. And that really reduced littering dramatically, and still does. And the third is to sometimes we discuss the issue, whether vaccination is harmful or climate change is taking place or not, as if it's the epistemic content that is the real or the only issue. But as we often can see, it's more divided than that. So here is about GMOs, protests against GMOs. These can be two protests at the same time. One is that people actually find it very risky with GMOs for health or the environment. But the other one that is probably more key, if you're think about our Dionysian basis deep in our head, worries about power and power inequality and political economics and so on. The political economy, about the if multinational GMO producers get all the power from small farmers and so on. That's probably a concern that is perhaps should be discussed in separation. And here's this is about geoengineering that also has to do with it was a study done with the assumption was that people who dismiss the idea that climate change is taking place, they some reason for that is that they're worried about what will happen in society if everyone agrees or says that climate change is taking place. Will we have to abandon our Western lifestyles? Will it be a completely different ideology steering the world and so on? So they presented climate deniers, if we say that sloppily, they didn't talk about climate change, whether it exists or not, but they said that, well, look, okay, you don't believe in climate change, but we're going to show you some ways in which various researchers try to solve climate change. And here is one where you send out huge mirrors in the atmosphere and so on. This is one way. And after that, they checked the beliefs about the climate deniers, and those who had been exposed to solutions that they didn't see hampered their or did compromise their lifestyles or community life or anything, they became worried about climate change. So by seeing a solution to something you don't believe existed, people can actually become aware of the problem. And then we should think about how issues are framed, because it's often not, the Apollonian view is probably quite naive, saying that facts speak for themselves. They rarely speak for themselves, and we cannot feel statistics in our we haven't been built that way. So we need other types of storytelling and framings of the issues in order to really become engaged and change. And here, those who are against vaccinations or don't believe in climate change or also are most worried about GMOs, they have been most successful in using the Dionysian strategies of but there have been studies also done with people who are very much against vaccination, where they have changed the frame when they're presented vaccination from a shot. A shot is something, I mean, there is something very counterintuitive in vaccination, putting an alien shot with an enemy substance, often into a healthy baby or something. It's something very weird with it. But if we change the framing into that this is a benevolent substance helping us identify an enemy in our bodies, thus hindering the enemy to have an impact, this has actually reduced the vaccination hesitancy. And this is, I'm from Sweden, so I'm a proud Greta Thunberg is from my country, and I just want to show that her story, which mobilizes many people, it turned very easily into a children's tale, which makes also that it resonates with our human narrative. Now I see I'm running out of time. It has to do more with the reframing into using more of the conservative framings of issues such as climate change. And then finally, I hope that we will all could discuss something about how the Apollonian and Dionysian strategies could be combined. And one obvious one is to instead of, we shouldn't be too preoccupied with epistemic controversies and do we really believe in climate change or not. Perhaps first create practical collaborations, which is Dionysian, and then the rest will solve itself. And there are other ways as well. So yes, where is, I had such a, no, sorry. There it is. So it was so cute. Yeah. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much for that overview of these different mechanisms and ways that we can potentially address them. I think that's really exciting to think about all of these different mechanisms. So now we can open up to some questions. You can start to raise your hand and I'll take a look in the Google Doc to see if people have already written down some questions. So any raised hands I don't see so far. So in the Google Doc, there's one question. Okay. It says, how does the Apollonian versus Dionysian distinction relate to relation between rational and reasonable, which can also be viewed as representing two types of reason, the latter being civic-oriented? Just different terms for the same thing, or is there a nuanced difference?
Let's see, there was a few. You said reasoning versus rational. Yeah.
Yeah, rational versus reasonable.
Yeah, so that if we by reasonable mean that also takes the moral context and the social aspects, this is rather similar, but I think to me it's more of the distinction between Apollonian and Dionysian is more about issue-based rationality, which we also often deal with. We think about that we should make people want to solve explicit problems or reduce the harm they cause, whether violent or just being negligent or whatever. But in order to be motivated to do that, are ways of having people, to make people actually turn this into practice. It really needs to people need to show that it gives them they have a Dionysian trust in doing that. Doing good must be rewarding socially, must raise their status or that they're appreciated or their esteem or something. That's why I asked about the men in Liberia, whether doing more good actually was socially beneficial for themselves in their positions in their community. Yeah, sorry, this was a bit.
Great. So then there's another question in the chat. Then it says, so it's like Weber's spec rationality and Wert rationality.
Please repeat.
So it's like Weber's spec rationality and Wert rationality. Sorry, the language mix.
Yeah, a little bit, but Max Weber there, he also distinguished between values and non-values. So it's not quite the same. I would, yeah. I go through some of that rationality issues and combining it with bounded rationality and other things in the book, but I can't solve it here right now.
Yeah, it's quite a complex comparison.
Yeah.
Yes. So then I'll briefly ask maybe a more straightforward question. What do you think, if we're going to potentially, some of us who are here, pursue some experimental efforts to see if we can develop interventions which could be then adopted by society, which direction would you be most anxious or excited to see that starting in?
Yeah, I would like to, I think that a lot is, let me see if I can just show you here briefly. Where is it? No, I'm going to go to the last. No, I think we could, in information, spreading information, and in helping people move in more towards more well-doing and less ill-doing, we need to make more use of our evolved, the enormous weight we put on our reputation and our position in society. So there are, for instance, when it comes to, there are new alternatives to Twitter where people, any person get to vote on the epistemic accuracy of the claims, and they also get reputation gradings the same way as in Airbnb and so on, but when it comes to news sites or knowledge and so on. And there I think we could make a huge difference by interventions, making use of the reputation issue of those who make knowledge claims. Yeah.
Very cool. Yes, that sounds like a great direction.